I always thought I liked silence. After my aunt died, the house she left behind sat empty for a while. No one else in the family wanted it. Too far out, too many memories, too much upkeep. But I was at a point in my life where the noise of the city wasn't just annoying anymore, it was suffocating. I'd just gone through a breakup, I was burned out at work, and I was tired of pretending to enjoy crowded brunches with people I couldn't stand. So, I moved in. Temporarily, I told myself. It's an old house, perched on a ridge above a weather-beaten valley. The kind of place that groans with every gust of wind and smells like time itself. You have to drive nearly 20 minutes off the main road just to reach the gravel path leading up to it. No neighbors, no passing cars, just wind, woods, and the occasional flock of crows that always seem to circle but never land. For the first few weeks, I settled into the quiet like it was a warm blanket. Coffee in the mornings with the windows fogged up from my breath, reading for hours without notifications interrupting me, falling asleep to the sound of distant rain tapping the roof like fingers. But silence has layers, and when it gets too quiet, it's like your own thoughts start bouncing off the walls and coming back stranger than they left. I started noticing things, small things at first. A picture frame slightly crooked, a faucet dripping when I was sure I turned it off, the attic door creaking ever so slightly when the wind blew a certain way. I told myself the house was just settling, that I was just adjusting. But the night the storm came, the real storm, not just the drizzle and fog I'd gotten used to, that was when I stopped being able to explain things away. That night marked the end of my peaceful silence. That night, I heard the first noise from the attic. It was around 2 a.m. when I woke up. The storm had rolled in, so violently that the whole house seemed to inhale with it. Wind howled against the windows, and thunder cracked open the sky like some ancient god was splitting the earth. My bedroom was lit in short, stuttering flashes from the lightning, sharp bursts of light that made the shadows stretch and jerk like something was moving just out of reach. I lay there for a moment, listening. At first I thought it was just the storm. You tell yourself it's just the storm. But beneath the thunder, beneath the rattle of the windows and the hiss of rain on the roof, there was something else. A soft, slow dragging sound. Right above me, I held my breath. It came again. Kirk! Pause. Kirk! Like something heavy being pulled across the attic floor. Not fast, not frantic, just methodical, slow, as if whatever was up there wasn't in a hurry. At first, I thought maybe a branch had landed on the roof. That made sense. That was reasonable. So I got up, padded out into the hallway in my socks, heart starting to thump against my ribs. I remember the hallway felt colder than the rest of the house. Not freezing, just wrong. The attic door was closed. It's one of those old hatches in the ceiling with a wooden pull string. I looked up at it. The string was swaying just slightly, even though there was no draft. Another crack of thunder, another sound. This time it wasn't dragging, it was footsteps, light, careful steps, and they stopped, directly above where I stood. I didn't move, I barely breathed. Then, silence. Not the kind that fades naturally. It was like the house froze. The storm outside seemed to mute itself. My ears buzzed with it. I was standing there, staring up at that hatch, when I got this sudden, bone-deep feeling that if I pulled it open, something would be waiting for me. So I didn't. I just backed away. Slowly. And as I did, I swear to God, I felt watched. Not from above, from behind. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat on the edge of my bed with every light on, staring at the ceiling like I was waiting for something to push through. My body was wired, frozen in that weird mix of exhaustion and adrenaline where your hands shake but your brain refuses to shut down. I kept telling myself it was just the house, just the wind, just the storm shifting the beams and floorboards. But that didn't explain the footsteps. That didn't explain how they stopped exactly above me. And it sure as hell didn't explain the feeling that followed me as I backed down the hallway, like someone was breathing at the back of my neck. I even checked the doors and windows. Locked. No signs of forced entry. Nothing out of place. Just the quiet drip of rainwater sliding down the gutters and the soft thrum of wind fading into the distance. When the storm passed, the sky turned a dull gray. No birds chirping. No early morning sounds, just silence. I made coffee and stood in the kitchen staring at the attic hatch, half expecting it to fall open on its own. It didn't. I didn't tell anyone. Not at first. What would I even say? Hey, I think someone was in the attic last night, but I didn't check because I was too scared. They'd laugh, or worse, offer advice, like I was a child imagining monsters under the bed. So I went on with my day, cleaned a little, tried to read, but that feeling, That feeling never left, like something had shifted just slightly, as if the house wasn't quite as empty as it had been the day before. It sounds ridiculous now, but I kept glancing at my phone, half expecting it to ring. No one ever calls me, but somehow, I felt like someone would. And when they did, they wouldn't be calling from outside. They'd be calling from upstairs. By the second week, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe I wanted to be scared. Maybe I'd spent so long being numb, emotionally deadened by the routine of work and city life, that a part of me welcomed the adrenaline, like it made me feel alive again, even if that feeling came wrapped in fear. That morning after the storm, I went up to the attic in broad daylight. I had to borrow a ladder from the shed. The house didn't come with one, strangely. You'd think a place this old would have some kind of built-in way to access the upper crawl space, but there wasn't. Just the wooden hatch with the string, and behind it, darkness. I climbed up, heart beating, flashlight in one hand. The attic was empty, dusty, dry, cold. Nothing but old trunks, a broken rocking chair, and insulation that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. No footprints, no disturbed boxes, nothing out of place. It was almost insulting how normal it looked. Still, I left the hatch cracked just slightly after that. Not enough to draw attention, just enough to convince myself that I was watching it now. I'd know if it opened again. I'd hear it. And then, the noises started coming back. Not immediately, not every night, but after a few quiet evenings I began noticing the same faint, rhythmic creaks, always between 1:45 and 2:10 a.m. Not loud, just enough to register. Kirk. Pause. Kirk. Pause. It sounded like someone shifting their weight on a loose floorboard. Slowly. Carefully. I started writing the times down. I even recorded the ceiling one night with my phone on voice memo. The next morning I played it back and the creaks were there, just faint enough to question, but there. I told myself houses make noise. But why only at that time? Why so consistently? Why only after that one storm? And why did it always stop the second I moved? It was like whatever was making the sound knew I was listening. A few nights later I decided to test it. I'd been lying in bed for over an hour, the ceiling fan spinning above me like a lazy sentinel. My phone screen glowed beside me, 1:46 a.m. Right on time, the creaking began. This time, it wasn't the storm. The sky was clear, the air dead still, not a breath of wind outside, but above me, those same hesitant creaks. Kirk. Kirk. It wasn't random anymore. It was paced, timed, like someone was waiting for me to notice, so I sat up, gently. The creaking stopped. I stayed completely still. Nothing. I shifted slightly to the left. Kirk. Another step. I leaned back. Silence. I exhaled slowly, heart beginning to race. My room was dimly lit by a small lamp on the nightstand. The hallway light was off. The house was quiet, still, holding its breath. I stood up. Nothing. I tiptoed out into the hall, this time not looking directly at the attic hatch, trying to act like I wasn't paying attention. Another step. Kirk. My skin prickled. I turned my head quickly and looked up. Nothing but stillness. The string from the attic door was hanging straight down, motionless. But something had changed. It wasn't the sound itself. It was the intention behind it. Before, it had seemed passive, like a house adjusting to weather. But now, it felt like a game. A test, like something was mimicking movement just to see if I'd respond. I walked directly under the hatch and stared up at it. Total silence. Then something new. A very soft thud, like a hand, gently resting against the floorboards just above me. Not banging, not scratching, just a presence. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it was enough to turn my legs to water. I backed into my room, locked the door, something I hadn't done until that night, and sat in the corner with my back to the wall. I didn't hear the sound again, not that night. The next morning I didn't open the attic. I just couldn't make myself do it. I went through the motions of a normal day, showering, making toast, even trying to answer a few emails, but the whole time I felt like I was playing house, like none of it was real, like I was just pretending to live here. I kept looking up, the ceiling, the hallway, the corners of rooms that felt too quiet. Every step I took had weight now. I'd become hyper-aware of the floorboards, of how they groaned under pressure, and in turn, I could hear when they did it without me. when I was sitting still and something shifted anyway. It wasn't constant, it wasn't loud, but it was wrong. I replayed the recordings I'd taken. There were 2 now. And while nothing concrete jumped out, the creaks were consistent. Same time, same spacing, same weird rhythm. I considered sending the audio to someone, but who? And for what? Listen to how my ceiling creaks every night at 2 a.m. Isn't that terrifying? I'd sound insane. Part of me started wondering if I was. Sleep became difficult. I started leaving lights on, not because I thought it would protect me, but because I couldn't stand the darkness pressing in from every corner. I kept the TV on low volume just to drown out the silence. But nothing helped, because the silence wasn't empty anymore. It felt like something inside the house was waiting for me to let my guard down again, like the attic had become aware, like it knew when I was listening. I stopped going under it altogether. That section of the hallway, the part directly beneath the hatch, became off limits, a blind spot in my own home, and still, every night, the sounds returned, always soft, always patient. Like someone pacing slowly, waiting. By the 3rd week, I stopped pretending. I was still going through the motions, cooking, cleaning, checking emails, watering the sad plant in the kitchen, but I wasn't really doing any of it. I was just moving around the house like a ghost, as if staying in motion would keep whatever was upstairs from noticing me. The attic hatch loomed above the hallway like a question I was too afraid to answer. Every time I passed it, I felt it pulling at my attention, like it wanted me to look up. Sometimes I did, just for a second, but I'd always regret it afterward. It felt like staring directly into a loaded gun. I hadn't been up since that morning after the storm, and even that brief visit had left a sour taste in my mouth. But now, the not knowing was gnawing at me. Something had changed. The rhythm of the creaks had become more deliberate. The feeling of being watched was no longer occasional. It was constant, subtle, but steady, like a presence just behind a curtain. I told myself I'd go up again, in daylight, fully prepared, rational. I even made a plan. I'd check for animals, squirrels, maybe a raccoon, something explainable. So I went to the little hook by the back door where the attic key always hung on a bent nail. It was gone. At first I just stared, thinking maybe I'd misplaced it. Maybe I'd left it near the ladder or dropped it in the shed. I searched everywhere. Kitchen drawers, bathroom cabinets, the old coat pockets by the stairs. Nothing. It wasn't lost. It was gone. And something about that fact hit me harder than I expected, because I knew, with every part of me, that I hadn't moved it. I hadn't even touched it since that first time. Someone or something had. And now it was holding the key to the one place in the house I was trying not to think about, the one place I was too scared to go. That night, I barely slept. I kept turning over in bed, Yes, darting between the clock and the ceiling. The attic creaked again. Same time, same pattern, but I didn't move. I just listened, frozen, covers pulled tight up to my chin like a child pretending the blanket could protect me. At some point, I drifted off. When I woke up the next morning, the first thing I did, before brushing my teeth, before making coffee, was check the hook by the back door again. And there it was. The key, just hanging there, like it had never left. Except now it looked different. It was the same old-fashioned iron skeleton key, sure, but the metal was duller, discolored. It looked like it had been left in the rain, the surface mottled with faint green and brown tarnish. I reached for it instinctively and jerked my hand back. It was wet, not damp. Wet, like it had just been pulled out of a stream or dug up from muddy earth. I stood there staring at it, heart crawling up into my throat. The house was quiet, oppressively still. Eventually, I grabbed a paper towel and wrapped the key without touching it. I didn't know why, but I couldn't make myself hold it directly. My fingers tingled even through the towel, maybe nerves, maybe something else. I set it down on the counter and stared at it, and then a thought struck me. A stupid, impossible, completely insane thought. What if it hadn't just been moved? What if it had been used? I turned slowly toward the hallway, toward the attic hatch. The string hung there, still swaying slightly, though the air was still. I didn't go check. I couldn't. Because if the key had been used, then something had unlocked that hatch in the middle of the night. And if something had gone up there, no. If something had come down, then it didn't matter where the key was now, because it was already inside the house. The rest of that day felt wrong. Not like I was being haunted exactly, but like I'd already been found. Like the house had been circling me for weeks, and now it had finally stepped inside the lines. I kept the key wrapped in that same paper towel and tucked it away in a drawer, but I couldn't stop thinking about it, where it had been, what had touched it, why it came back, and why it was wet. I kept walking by the attic hatch, forcing myself not to look up, but it was like trying not to scratch an itch deep inside your skull. I could feel it in my peripheral vision, a presence that didn't care whether I saw it or not. It knew I was scared. It fed on the hesitation. I didn't want to believe any of this. God knows I wanted to write it off as stress or loneliness or some deeply buried trauma playing tricks on me. But the key ruined that illusion. That thing was gone, and then it came back, not just moved, but changed. Physically changed. And there's no part of me that believes I did that. I wasn't sleepwalking. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't losing track of reality. Whatever this is, it's happening. And it's getting closer. I started noticing other things too, small but unsettling. Shadows that lingered too long in the corners when I turned off a light. Cold spots that moved with me, not ahead of me. The television flickering to static for a split second as I passed the room. And then there was the smell, just faint, barely noticeable. But on certain days, usually in the early morning or just after sunset, I caught a whiff of something that didn't belong. Earth, wet soil, like something freshly unearthed, something that had been buried a long, long time. I didn't say it out loud, not then. But that's the night I stopped thinking of the house as mine. It didn't belong to me, and I wasn't alone anymore. I used to love mornings in this house. There was something peaceful about waking up to the muted light filtering through the old lace curtains. The stillness before the wind picked up, the soft creaks that felt back then like the house was just stretching awake. But now, every morning felt like a recovery, like I'd survived something, even if I couldn't explain what. And the moment I opened my eyes, I felt the house watching me realize that. The coffee didn't taste right anymore. The silence no longer comforted me. It hummed beneath the walls like breath behind plaster. Even the light felt colder, more sterile, like the windows weren't letting the sun in. They were keeping something out. I started locking my bedroom door at night, and I moved the dresser in front of it. It felt ridiculous, but also necessary. And every night before bed, I'd check the attic hatch from the hallway. Still closed, still swaying ever so slightly, like it was pretending to be still. One morning, I woke up before dawn. No storm, no footsteps, just a weird, pulsing ache behind my eyes. I had this overwhelming urge to go check the hallway, even though everything in me screamed not to. But I did. The light was off, but the moonlight was enough. I stepped out of my room, heart already pounding, and then I saw it. The attic hatch was open. Not all the way, just enough to see the edge of the opening, the black square cut into the ceiling, the string hanging limply. I froze. It had never opened before, not by itself, not ever. I stood there in the dark, barefoot and shaking, waiting for something to move, for something to drop down, for a face to lean out and look at me upside down. Nothing happened, but that was worse somehow. Because now I couldn't tell if something had just gone up, or was already down here. I don't know how long I stood there staring at the hatch. Could have been seconds, could have been minutes. Time starts to behave differently when fear sinks into your bones like cold water. Everything stretches, warps. You start to feel yourself unravel. Eventually I moved. Not because I was brave, not because I wanted to, but because not moving suddenly felt worse, like I was giving it permission to come closer. I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer. My hands were shaking so badly that I dropped it once, and the sound of plastic clattering against tile made me flinch like a gunshot. When I finally got it working, I made my way back to the hallway. I stopped directly beneath the open hatch. The wooden string still hung down like a limp limb. The hatch was cracked open at an angle. No ladder, no access, just darkness yawning above me. I lifted the flashlight slowly, the beam slicing through dust motes that danced like ash. At first I saw nothing. Just the old wooden beams, the edge of a trunk, insulation fluffing at the corners. And then, something shifted. It was small, just the subtlest movement, behind the boxes near the far end of the attic space. I didn't see a face, not really. But I saw something pull back, like someone retreating behind cover, trying not to be seen, just a sliver of motion, a glimpse of fabric, a suggestion of presence. I whispered something, I don't even remember what. Maybe hello? Maybe just my own name. Silence, and then from the darkness above, something answered. A soft creak, then another, And then, stillness. I didn't wait. I backed away, never turning my back on the hatch. I wanted to run. I should have run, but the house felt like it had me by the throat. When I finally got to my bedroom, I slammed the door, locked it, and pushed the dresser back in front of it. I sat there, flashlight still on, heart pounding in my ears. The attic door stayed open for the rest of the night, and I didn't hear a single sound, which somehow made it worse. By morning, I still hadn't moved. I just sat there on the floor, flashlight long dead, my legs numb and stiff from holding the same position too long. The sun was up, weak light spilling through the windows like it didn't want to be there. I didn't check the hallway right away. Part of me was sure that if I opened the door, something would be standing there. Or worse, gone, but recently gone. That feeling where you just miss something, like walking into a room and catching the scent of someone who shouldn't be there anymore. When I finally opened the door, everything looked normal. Attic hatch closed, string still. But I knew what I'd seen. I knew it had been open, and I knew I hadn't imagined that movement, that shadow, that pullback into the darkness like something had been caught watching me. So I asked myself, what if it wasn't just hiding? What if it was waiting for me to come up? That was the thought I couldn't shake. Not that something had come down, but that something had opened the hatch, left it ajar, and sat back to see what I'd do, to see if I'd be curious, to see if I'd be brave, to see if I'd climb the ladder and meet it on its ground. It felt like a trap, a test, and I'd passed, only by being too terrified to take the bait. That afternoon, I nailed the attic shut. I told myself it was temporary, just until I could figure out what was happening, just until I could think clearly, but I didn't believe that. I wasn't trying to keep something in. I was trying to keep myself from going up. Because some part of me, the same part that makes people slow down at car accidents or stare too long at open windows in tall buildings, wanted to go. Not out of bravery, but because it felt like I already belonged up there, like the attic was calling me home. The attic stayed sealed for 3 days. 3 long, slow, stretched-out days. And for a moment, a brief blinking moment, I almost believed that had done the trick. No creaking at 2 a.m., no wet keys, no cold spots or shifting shadows. Just silence. But it wasn't the same kind of silence I'd fallen in love with when I first moved in. This silence had weight. It pressed down on the house like a fog you couldn't see, but still had to breathe through, the kind that makes your skin feel tight and your thoughts grow heavy, a silence that feels like it's holding its breath. Waiting. I tried distracting myself, took long walks, cleaned the house top to bottom, rearranged furniture just to feel in control of something. I even called an old friend, tried to sound casual, told him I was just settling into the place. I didn't mention the attic. I didn't mention the fact that I was barely sleeping, that I kept the lights on in every room, or that I'd started hearing things in the walls now, tiny clicks and soft, wet thuds like something crawling where it shouldn't. The weather turned again that third night. Another storm, this one louder, closer, angrier. Rain hit the windows like thrown pebbles, and wind whistled through unseen gaps in the old wooden siding. That's when I saw her. It was maybe 1:30 a.m. I was passing the living room to check a window I thought I'd left cracked open. The fireplace stood cold and dark, and the room flickered with dim yellow light from a table lamp I'd left on earlier. And there she was, just standing there, at the far end of the room, near the window, facing me, not moving, not making a sound, just standing. A girl, pale skin, long dark hair, dressed in something that looked like it belonged in another decade. Bare feet, head tilted just slightly like she didn't understand what she was looking at, or who. And in that moment I wouldn't move. I didn't blink, because deep down I already knew. She had come from the attic. I don't know how long I stood there. It could have been 10 seconds or 10 minutes. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. The storm was howling outside, but inside, right there in that moment, it felt like everything was dead silent again. The kind of silence that rings in your ears. I opened my mouth to say something. I think I was going to ask, "Who are you?" But no sound came out. My voice just stuck in my throat like it didn't belong to me anymore. Her eyes were dark, not like someone standing in a shadow, but like they had no light inside them. Empty, still, like the glass eyes on an old doll. And there was something wrong with her hands. They were long, too long. And even though she wasn't moving them, I got this horrible, cold certainty that if she did, they'd move all wrong, too fast, or not at all. Like the joints were broken. A gust of wind shook the window behind her, and the lamp flickered once, just once. And then she was gone. Like she'd never been there at all. No footsteps, no blur, just gone. I ran into the room, looked around in every direction, behind the curtains, under the furniture. I even opened the front door like an idiot, stepping barefoot onto the wet porch, cold rain slapping my skin. Nothing. No footprints on the floor. No wet marks from her bare feet. I stood there, dripping, heart pounding so loud I could feel it in my teeth, and suddenly I had this overwhelming feeling, like I'd just been watched by something that wasn't supposed to see me, that I'd just been acknowledged by something I'd tried to ignore, and now it knew me. Now it recognized me. And it had a face. Not a monstrous one. Not twisted or bloody or torn. No, just the face of a girl who shouldn't exist, who wasn't supposed to be here, but she was. I didn't sleep that night, didn't even try. I sat on the couch with every light in the house on, wrapped in a blanket like a scared kid, clutching the cordless phone in one hand and a fireplace poker in the other, like either of them could do anything if she came back. But nothing happened. The minutes stretched, hours blurred. My reflection in the window started to look like a stranger. I watched the sunrise crawl into the room, but it didn't bring warmth with it. It just made the shadows sharper. And I kept thinking, did I really see her? Could it have been the storm messing with my head, my body reacting to too much stress, too little sleep? Was I grieving? Maybe in some sick, buried part of me I was inventing a ghost to process the past. But no matter how hard I tried to rationalize it, the image wouldn't go away. Her face, her stillness, the weight in the room when she looked at me. It wasn't grief, it wasn't a memory, and it wasn't human. I started pacing. I looked through old photos, searched online for stories about hallucinations, mold poisoning, even hauntings. I needed something, anything to cling to that made this make sense. But there was nothing that explained why I could still feel her. Like her presence had been stitched into the house itself. Every time I turned a corner, I half expected to see her standing there again, quiet, still, watching. I was scared to blink too long, scared she'd reappear. And the worst part? A tiny, traitorous part of me wanted her to. Not because I wasn't scared, but because I needed proof, needed to know I wasn't losing my mind, that I hadn't imagined the whole thing. Because if I had, if she wasn't real, then what was happening to me? The worst part about this kind of fear is how it makes you question the ordinary. I started trying to reestablish a routine. Wake up, shower, eat, work. It wasn't on. Teasy. Every time the floor creaked or a branch brushed the window, I flinched like it was going to turn into her again. But I had to do something. If I sat still, I'd spiral. So I made lists. Grocery shopping, cleaning the kitchen, updating my resume. It felt pointless, but structure gave me something to grab onto. That's when the phone calls started. It began with a missed call around 2:13 a.m. No name, just no caller ID. I didn't think much of it, maybe a wrong number or a spammer. But the next night, same time, another call. Then again the night after that. Always between 2 and 3 in the morning. Always silent. Always exactly the same duration. 33 seconds. I picked up on the third night. I told myself I'd be brave. Maybe yell at whoever was behind it. Maybe get answers. But all I heard was breathing. Soft, uneven, close. Like someone was holding the phone right against their mouth. Not heavy like a prank. Not mechanical like static. Just slow, shallow breathing. I waited the full 33 seconds. Didn't say a word. Didn't hang up. I just listened. Then it clicked off. No voice. No background noise. No ID. I told myself it was nothing. Some creep. Some automated scam. But then I checked the call log. The number wasn't unknown anymore. It had resolved to my own number. It was coming from my phone, or at least from the same line. I stared at the screen, my heart sinking into my stomach. How was that even possible? And as I stood there frozen, the phone vibrated again in my hand. New voicemail, no name, no number, no message preview, just waiting. I hesitated before playing the voicemail. I don't know why. Maybe I was hoping it would just vanish if I didn't touch it, like the way you ignore a bad dream and it fades by morning. But it didn't vanish, and I couldn't leave it alone. I pressed play. At first, silence. A heavy kind, like the mic was picking up a room full of stillness. Then, again, the breathing. But not like before. This time it was rhythmic, deliberate, almost like someone was trying to calm themselves, or me. Then came the voice, and that's when my knees nearly buckled. It was a whisper, barely audible, but I recognized it instantly. You left me here. 4 words, soft, strained, spoken with a kind of hurt I didn't know how to process. It was her. The girl from the attic, the one who vanished, the one whose eyes held too many stories and whose presence had twisted the house into something I didn't recognize. You left me here. The message ended there. I replayed it 10 times, maybe more, each time hoping, praying that it would sound different, that I'd find some trick of audio, some glitch, something that made it less real. But it was real as the chill on my neck when she whispered it, as real as the growing dread curling around my chest, and it wasn't the only one. That night, 3 more voicemails appeared. Each came from my number, each at 33-minute intervals, each with a new phrase. Why didn't you come back? It's cold here. I see you. The last one, she said my name, slowly, intimately, like she was standing right behind me, her mouth inches from my ear. I dropped the phone, let it clatter to the floor. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't move. Whatever I had escaped from in that attic, it had found a way out too, through me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone on the floor where I'd dropped it, the screen still glowing faintly, like it wanted me to look again. I didn't. I couldn't. What was there to see that wouldn't confirm what I already feared? The voice was hers. The phrases weren't random. They were targeted, personal, like she knew me, knew my guilt. I tried rationalizing it, of course. Caller ID spoofing, a cruel prank, maybe a sick ex-tenant with recordings, or maybe someone found my phone in the attic and was messing with me. But none of that explained how my own number was calling me, or how she knew my name when I never gave it to her, or the exact way she whispered that final message, like it came from somewhere far deeper than a prank ever could. I spent the next morning researching everything I could about number cloning and call spoofing. I even called my carrier. They said it was impossible for someone to clone my exact number and leave voicemails from it without extensive access to my device or account. Check for malware, the rep said flatly, like this was just another Tuesday glitch. But I knew better. This wasn't malware. It was her. And the worst part, I felt her. Still. It started small, just that uneasy feeling, like something was watching me from dark corners. But by noon, I could swear I smelled the attic again, that musky, decaying wooden scent. Only now, it was here, in my apartment, in my clothes. I kept the lights on, every room, every hour. It didn't help. By the 3rd night, I started hearing faint breathing, not from the phone now, but from behind doors, inside walls, beneath the floor. She hadn't stayed behind. She didn't vanish. She'd followed me, and she was just getting started. I'd always thought of my apartment as a kind of fortress, tiny, creaky, and a little drafty, sure, but mine, a safe, familiar space I could control. That illusion dissolved the moment I walked through the front door after work the next day. The air inside felt wrong, heavier, thick like humidity, but dry. I remember the weird sensation of my breath sticking to the back of my throat, as if I'd walked into a room that hadn't been aired out in years. I paused for a moment, keys still in hand, just listening. Nothing. Just silence. No fridge hum, no distant neighbor arguing through paper-thin walls, no city noise filtering through the cracked window seals. Just nothing. I chalked it up to nerves. I'd barely slept in 2 nights. My eyes burned, and I was on edge from constantly checking my phone for more calls. There hadn't been any, not since that final voicemail. But that wasn't reassuring. It was worse, because now I was waiting, expecting. I dropped my bag and went straight to the kitchen. I needed something familiar, routine. I turned on the faucet. Water flowed like normal. I opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle, closed the door, and paused. There, on the opposite wall of the kitchen, where the paint had always been chipped from the old tenant's wall clock, were 4 faint scratch marks, vertical, evenly spaced, like fingernails. I stared at them, frozen. I hadn't noticed them before. No one else had keys. I leaned in closer, heart hammering now. The grooves weren't fresh, but they weren't old either. The plaster was flaky, like it had been dug into with effort, deliberate. I touched them. They were cold, colder than the wall around them. Suddenly, every sound outside, the passing cars, a dog barking 2 buildings over, felt miles away. My ears rang in the quiet. That was when I realized it wasn't just the room that felt still. It was waiting for me to react. And something behind that silence was listening. That night, I didn't even try to sleep in my bed. I sat on the couch with every light on, TV playing some late-night show I wasn't watching. I couldn't focus. My eyes kept drifting to that part of the kitchen wall where those 4 scratch marks remained. They looked deeper in the artificial light. I told myself I'd report it to the landlord in the morning, maybe even call someone. Anyone, if things didn't feel better by then. But deep down, I knew I wouldn't, because I'd have to explain what was wrong, and I didn't know how. At around 3:17 a.m., I remember the exact time because I checked. I heard it. A faint dragging sound. Not outside. Inside. Coming from the hallway wall near the entrance to my bedroom. It was subtle, like something dry scraping softly across drywall. Then a pause. Then again. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The hairs on my arms rose. My breath went shallow. I muted the TV. I sat there absolutely still, heart pounding in my ears. The sound came again, closer now. Not from the kitchen, not from the bedroom. From inside the wall itself, behind it. I stood up slowly, as if sudden movement would break something delicate in the air around me. I walked toward the hallway, barefoot on the cold wooden floor, each step too loud in the quiet. As I neared the wall, I pressed my ear to it. Silence. Then, a faint tap. And then another scratch, this time faster, more desperate, like someone trying to claw their way out. I staggered back. Then right in front of me, on the living room wall, opposite the hallway, new marks began to appear. I swear on everything. I watched them form. One, then another, then two more. Each about 6 inches long, dragging downward, slow and deliberate. There was no hand, no movement, just scratches appearing in real time. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My body just refused. All I could do was back into the farthest corner of the room and watch. The marks stopped, but I didn't feel alone. Not anymore. I didn't move for nearly an hour. I stayed hunched in that corner like some wounded animal, eyes locked on those 4 new scratches that now joined the others in the kitchen. My mind raced through every explanation it could reach for. Wind, rodents, stress hallucination. But none of it accounted for what I saw with my own eyes. It wasn't a dream. I didn't fall asleep. I watched them appear. And worse, something wanted me to see. Eventually, the sun started bleeding through the blinds, gray and lifeless, and I stood. My legs ached, trembling under the weight of exhaustion and fear. I inched toward the wall again, breath shallow, and ran my fingers over the marks. They were warm. Not fresh like blood, not dry like old paint, just warm, as if the wall itself was breathing. I tried taking a photo with my phone. Blurry, too dark, useless. I scrubbed at the marks with a sponge until the surface turned raw. Nothing came off. They were deep, etched into the drywall like a knife had carved them. And I realized something then. Whatever was doing this, it wasn't trying to hurt me. It was performing for me, like it wanted me to witness every stage, to spiral, to break. I didn't go to work that day. I couldn't. How do you show up and explain that your walls are scratching themselves open? That something unseen is communicating through destruction? I spent the entire day pacing from room to room, whispering apologies to no one, asking whatever it was to stop. Just stop. I hadn't slept in almost 36 hours, and yet I didn't feel tired. Just peeled open. Vulnerable in a way I didn't know was possible. I wasn't afraid of dying anymore. I was afraid of being watched, studied, like a rat in a glass box, and I had no way to escape. Because this wasn't in the apartment anymore. It was the apartment. It had been 4 days since the scratches. I'd stopped trying to clean them, pacing, stopped fighting sleep. Now I just listened. The apartment had taken on a new tone. Not louder, just more present. I could hear its bones settling at all hours. The wind didn't knock anymore. It whispered. Floorboards creaked in patterns, not randomly, and the walls didn't just groan from temperature shifts. They sighed. By now, I knew better than to ignore the cues. But what finally pushed me over wasn't the kitchen. It wasn't even the attic. It was that one damn door at the end of the hallway. The locked room. The landlord had mentioned it during my lease walkthrough, said it was used for long-term storage and belonged to his brother, who had passed away years ago. No one had the key anymore. "Don't worry about it," he said with a smile, tapping the doorframe. "It's just a closet." I never questioned it. I never even went near it. But now it was the only thing I could hear. It started with faint shifting, like boxes sliding over wood, then something like a soft knock, followed by a low, slow dragging. Every night around 3 a.m., always from inside the room, always the same tempo. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a scalpel. At first, I assumed it was the neighbors, but there were no neighbors. My unit was sandwiched between two unoccupied apartments, one of which was under renovation. And anyway, the sound wasn't coming from above or beside. It was directly ahead, right behind that door. Sometimes I'd stand in the hallway with my ear pressed against the frame. Sometimes I'd whisper, "Is someone in there?" Once I knocked, and something knocked back. Same number of times, same rhythm, same pause. I didn't sleep after that. I started dreaming with my eyes open, watching the doorknob, wondering if it would turn, and part of me wanted it to. I told myself it was just wood swelling with moisture. That old buildings creak, that heat rises, that maybe, just maybe, trauma echoes. But I didn't believe it. By the sixth night, I couldn't take it anymore. The knocking had changed. It was softer, not hesitant, just intimate, as if whatever was inside had grown confident, like it knew I was listening, like we were playing a game and it was finally its turn. 03 a.m. The air felt thicker, almost humid. I remember standing barefoot on the hallway floor, sweat drying on my neck, heart barely keeping a beat. I walked toward the door. My footsteps felt too loud, like I was interrupting something. When I stopped in front of it, everything else stopped too. Even the wind outside paused, as if the whole world was waiting. I reached out and touched the doorknob. It was cold. Not room temperature cold. Basement freezer cold. I pressed my ear against the wood. Silence. No knock, no drag, no breath. Then I whispered, "Who's in there?" Nothing. Until... knock, knock, knock. 3 slow taps, timed, deliberate, inches from my face. I jumped back, heart in my throat, and before I could talk myself out of it, I grabbed the doorknob with both hands and yanked. It didn't budge. I kicked it. I cursed. I slammed my shoulder into it again and again, my adrenaline overriding common sense. And then it gave. The door creaked open just an inch, and something exhaled from inside. I swear to God, it wasn't air pressure. It was a breath. Wet, heavy, human. I froze. I slowly pushed it open. Pitch black. The room was completely empty. Bare wooden floor, bare walls. No boxes, no shelves. Just dust. Except for one thing. In the center of the room was a phone. My phone. The one I lost weeks ago. The screen lit up as I stepped closer. One notification. Missed call. Unknown. Timestamp. 3:03 a.m. I didn't touch the phone. I wouldn't. Just standing there staring at it. I felt like it was watching me back, like it wasn't a device anymore. It was a message, a threat, a link. I slowly backed out of the room and closed the door, but this time I didn't need to lock it. I knew, somehow, that whatever had been in there, it wasn't anymore. I barely slept that night. I sat in the living room with all the lights on, the phone still upstairs where I'd left it. I kept waiting for another knock, another call, another sign. Nothing came. But the silence, it was worse. There's a certain kind of quiet that feels too intentional, like it's giving you space to fall apart in peace. That's what that night was, a stillness that watched me unravel from the corners of the room. By morning, I mustered up the courage to go back up. The room was the same, empty. The phone still lay there, screen dark now. I picked it up, hesitant, like I was lifting something contaminated. The battery was dead, but it shouldn't have been. That model holds charge for days, and I'd only lost it 2 weeks prior. I charged it. I shouldn't have. When it powered on, there were no missed calls. Not one. No call logs at all for the past month. Just one audio recording saved under a folder I never created. No title. Just a timestamp. 3:03 a.m. I didn't play it. I deleted it. Or tried to. The phone crashed, and then restarted on its own. When it powered back on, the recording was still there. I threw the phone out the same day, drove miles away and dumped it in a river. But even now, every night at exactly 3:03 a.m., my current phone buzzes. No caller ID, no ringtone, just a vibration that stops the second I check it. No notifications, no messages, nothing. Just that faint humming static, and the feeling that someone, something, is waiting. After everything with the phone, I stopped pretending things would go back to normal. There's a point where denial stops protecting you and starts killing you, and I was way past it. So, I did the only thing that made sense. I started digging. I drove to the local town hall, this dusty, time-warped building that smelled like old paper and wood polish. I asked about property records, historical permits, tenant history. The clerk behind the counter, an older woman with Coke bottle glasses, gave me this tight smile that felt off, like she already knew what I was looking for. "Address?" she asked. When I told her, the smile disappeared. She typed, slow, careful. House was built in 1908, she muttered. Owned by the same family for 3 generations. Went into foreclosure in 98. Empty for years after that. What happened to the family, I asked. She glanced over the top of her glasses. Which one? That chilled me more than I expected. Turns out, my house had gone through 4 different owners since 1998. All of them stayed less than 3 years. None of them listed the property as a permanent residence. 2 owners rented it out, one to a group of college kids, one to a family of 5. When I asked about them, the clerk hesitated. The college kids moved out suddenly after one of them had a breakdown. No formal police report, just a note in the file. Lease terminated due to tenant mental health concerns. The family? The file was marked sealed. Can I speak to anyone who lived there, I asked. Neighbors? Anyone who might know something? The clerk shook her head. No one really talks about that house, she said softly. Not since the quiet started. I blinked. The what? The quiet, she said like it was obvious. They say once it settles into a place, people don't scream anymore, they just disappear. She didn't explain, and I didn't ask. Because I could feel it too, this hush crawling back into my bones, following me out the door, waiting to be let in again. I found her name at the bottom of an old neighborhood council roster, Miriam LeClaire. She'd lived on my street for 42 years. Her house was 2 doors down from mine, but she'd never answered the door when I first moved in. Now I understood why. When I knocked this time, she opened slowly, one eye peeking through the crack, then the chain sliding free. You're the one in the attic house, she said. Not a question, a statement. I nodded. She stepped aside. Miriam looked brittle, like something that had been folded too many times. Her hands trembled as she poured tea, but her eyes were sharp. I told her what had been happening, what I'd seen, what I'd heard. I kept expecting her to interrupt, to laugh, to call me crazy. She never did. You're not the first, she said softly. She tapped the side of her cup. That house is thin. Thin. Between here and somewhere else. It's always been that way. But it wasn't always active. Her eyes glistened. Not until the girl. I leaned in. There was a family, the Kramers, moved in around 89. Husband, wife, and their daughter, Melody. Sweet thing, always humming. She used to sit in the attic window, Miriam whispered, staring at the woods, said she could hear music in the trees. She paused. One night she just vanished. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, just her open window and a music box still playing. I swallowed hard. They searched for weeks. Her mother lost her mind. Said she still heard Melody calling from the house. What happened to them? I asked. They stayed longer than they should have. By the end, her father stopped speaking. Her mother wandered the street in her nightgown, calling Melody's name to the trees. Miriam's eyes locked onto mine. They called it a tragedy. I call it something else. I didn't breathe. The quiet doesn't take you all at once, she said. First, it softens you. Her hand touched mine. Then it calls. When I left Miriam's house, the wind had died. Everything outside was still, too still. The clouds hung low like a warning, the kind that presses against your skin instead of the sky. I walked home slowly, like something might break if I moved too fast. Inside, the house felt different. Not louder, just more aware. I closed the attic door, locked it, pushed a chair in front of it. But I knew none of it mattered. That door hadn't been the thing letting something in. I had. I kept thinking about what she said. It doesn't take you all at once. First, it softens you. I hadn't been sleeping well. I forgot words mid-sentence. I'd started hearing my name whispered from empty rooms. And worse, I responded to it. I sat on the couch and scrolled through my phone aimlessly, trying to ground myself. But every third swipe froze on a black screen. A single line of text appeared. Come upstairs. No notification, no app, just those words. I threw the phone. But deep down, part of me wanted to pick it back up. Part of me wanted to go upstairs. And that's when I understood. This wasn't a ghost story. It wasn't about something trapped, desperate to escape. It was about me, being lulled into staying, being taught to listen, like a child learning a melody one note at a time. Maybe that's what happened to Melody, to her mother. Maybe the attic didn't steal them. Maybe it simply convinced them that it wasn't wrong to disappear. And maybe that's what it wanted from me. to vanish quietly. No struggle, no sound, just stillness. And then, nothing. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the living room, listening to the silence creak and stretch around me. And somewhere above me, so faint I almost missed it, I heard humming. I tried to make the morning normal, made coffee, opened the windows, played a podcast just to fill the silence. But the house, it wouldn't let me pray. It was too still. Even the floorboards refused to creak underfoot, as if they were holding their breath. When I stood in the kitchen, the smell of coffee didn't comfort me like it used to. Instead, it reminded me of sitting beside a hospital bed, waiting, of watching someone fade away slowly and not knowing if they were ever truly gone. I shook it off. I needed to reclaim something, anything, so I started cleaning. Dusted the shelves, wiped the windows, vacuumed every room twice. And when I got to the hallway near the attic, I found something odd. A single scuff mark, long and thin, ran along the baseboard. It was recent, sharp, like something had been dragged, not by force but intentionally. It led from the base of the attic door toward my room. I stared at it too long, trying to reason with it, but the conclusion was always the same. Something had moved through the house last night. I didn't open the attic door. I couldn't, but I stood near it and just listened. Nothing. Except the smell. Faint, but there. Not rot. Not mold. Lilacs. The same faint floral scent from Melody's room, from her mother's blanket. That smell hadn't existed in this house before. I was sure of it. But now it was here, clinging to the air, winding into the vents, like something pressing itself through the cracks. And for a second, I felt calm. The scent made me feel safe, comforted, invited. But that feeling, it scared me more than anything, because I knew it wasn't mine. It belonged to something else. I followed the scent. Down the hallway, past the attic, toward the guest room, Melody's room. I hadn't gone in there since she disappeared. I couldn't. But today, it was like something nudged me. Not a sound, not a push, just a presence. A pressure behind my eyes, like a memory insisting it was real. The door creaked as I opened it and I nearly turned back. But then I saw it. On the dresser, the music box. It was hers. A cheap little antique store find she adored, paint chipped. One of the ballerina's arms missing. It hadn't worked in years, not since we moved in. And yet now, it was open and playing. That hollow, tinny lullaby filled the room, echoing off the walls. The ballerina turned in slow, jerky circles, like it was being forced to dance. I stepped closer, and the music slowed, like it recognized me, like it was responding. I picked it up, expecting the mechanism to jam like it always had before, but it spun effortlessly. That's when I noticed the mirror on the inside of the lid. It had fogged over. Condensation. Breath. I backed away, and as I did, I noticed something else, the curtains. They were tied back, neatly, deliberately. Melody always let them hang loose. She liked the darkness, said it helped her sleep, and her journal, the one the police had taken for evidence, it was back on her nightstand, open. I took a step closer and froze. The page had a single line written across it, over and over, almost like a chant. You forgot me, but I remembered everything. Each line darker, more frantic. And then, at the bottom of the page, my name, not written in pen, but in something smeared, something dark, something that looked like it had dried. I stood there, frozen. My name, scrawled over and over, dripped from the page like it was still fresh, though I didn't dare touch it to find out. My pulse thundered in my ears. I couldn't breathe. Every thing in that room screamed she was here, not in memory, not in grief. But now, I wanted to believe it was just trauma, residual grief, an overactive imagination in a house full of echoes. But then why did I remember putting that music box in the attic after the funeral? Why was it here now, playing? Why had the curtains changed? The journal returned. The handwriting matched hers. The pressure behind the words, the loops, the angry scratches, I knew them. I backed out of the room slowly, like I might wake something if I moved too fast. And as I reached the hallway, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called her phone. Not from guilt, not from ritual, but because in that moment, the line between grief and reality snapped. It rang. It rang. Not straight to voicemail like it should have. It rang once, then again, then, "Hello?" I nearly dropped my phone. It was her voice. Faint, raspy, almost like it was struggling to get through static. "Who is this?" I whispered. No answer, just a soft inhale, like someone bracing to speak. Then the line went dead. The silence afterward was too quiet, like the house itself had gone still to listen. I stood there for what felt like hours, phone still against my ear, hearing only the low hum of a dead line. And then the realization crawled into my spine. If she was calling from somewhere, it meant she was still here, or that something was. Something that remembered her voice, something that wanted to be found, or feared being forgotten. And worst of all, maybe I was never meant to leave that room. The rain came back hard that night, like it had been waiting for the right moment to make an entrance, slamming against the house in thick sheets, drowning out every other sound. It was the first time since I'd moved in that the storm felt like it wasn't just weather. It felt deliberate. I stayed downstairs, curled into the corner of the kitchen, phone in one hand, the music box in the other. I don't know why I brought it with me. Maybe because I was afraid to leave it unattended. Maybe because some part of me thought it would play again, and I needed to see it this time. I kept replaying the call. Not the audio. There wasn't a recording, just the sound in my head, her voice, that strained inhale, that pause before the line cut out. She had said hello, but was it really her? I asked myself that over and over, not in some abstract ghosts aren't real way, but in the way someone asks, "Did I lock the door?" After the fifth time checking. The words had weight, they didn't feel imagined, and it wasn't just the voice, it was the way she used to say it. Flat, curious, soft, but guarded. Exactly how Melody used to answer calls when she didn't recognize the number. I wanted to call again, but I couldn't, because the number was gone. When I opened my call history, it wasn't there. Not missed, not outgoing, nothing, just the older calls to disconnected voicemails. I dropped the phone onto the table like it had turned hot in my hand. Lightning flashed across the window, illuminating the kitchen in a sickly white glare, and for a second, I thought I saw someone standing at the edge of the backyard. Just a flicker, a blur behind the rain. I didn't check. Not this time. Whatever this was, it wasn't a message. It was a summons. And I had a feeling the house wasn't done with me yet. The lightning hadn't stopped flashing for over 5 minutes. Not in intervals. Constant. The sky was strobing like a warning light before something unthinkable. I sat frozen in the kitchen, every muscle locked tight. The air in the house felt heavier now, thicker, almost humid. It smelled like damp wood and something sour, like something had been pulled from a swamp and left to rot. And then it began again. Clink, clink, clink. I heard it echoing faintly through the floorboards above me. That soft, unmistakable chime. The music box. The same one in my hand. Only, I wasn't playing it. I checked. Still closed, still cold, still silent. But upstairs, it played. And this time the melody was wrong. Slower, slurred, like the notes were struggling to climb out of some deep place. The same notes Melody used to hum before bed, but dragged through something broken. I didn't move. I just listened. Then came the phone. Buzz, buzz. I looked down. It was face up on the table. Screen glowing. A call. No number. No name. Just the word. Attic. But this time, it wasn't a regular call. It was FaceTime. I didn't touch it. I didn't want to. But something else, opened the call for me. My screen lit up. Grainy. Gray. The attic. From an angle I didn't recognize, like a camera mounted in the far corner, aimed at the old wooden floorboards in the place where Melody had once kept her boxes. There was no one in the frame, just stillness, and then motion. Not from the center, but the edges. From the darkness in the corners of the shot. A hand, then another, long, white, human, but wrong. They reached forward toward the screen like whoever they belonged to knew I was watching, and then the face, but not hers. A face stretched into a smile that didn't move, lips that were dry and split, eyes that stared too long, and then the voice. "Come upstairs. We're waiting." The call ended itself, and the music box finally opened, on its own. The call ended, but I didn't move. The phone screen faded to black, and all I could see was my own pale reflection in it. wide-eyed, mouth slightly open like I was trying to breathe through water. I sat there, paralyzed, with every muscle in my body pulled so tight I could feel them trembling beneath my skin. My jaw locked, my teeth ached. My heart thumped so violently in my chest that it felt like it would bruise my ribs from the inside. The silence was worse than the noise. No music box, no footsteps, just the wind howling outside and the soft tick, tick, tick of the clock on the wall, indifferent to my unraveling. I tried to tell myself it was a trick, a glitch, some viral video or prank app or deep fake but no, because that angle from the corner of the attic, that wasn't public, that wasn't possible. There was no camera up there, no setup. The only time I'd seen that perspective was when I was a kid, hiding behind boxes, watching Melody cry into a photo she never showed me. My mouth was dry, but I couldn't bring myself to get a glass of water. Every step felt dangerous. Every shadow in the hallway suddenly seemed to lean a little closer when I passed. I held the music box in my lap like a relic, like maybe it could protect me. It didn't. Because when I finally got the courage to close it again, its lid slowly creaked shut with unnatural resistance. I noticed something I hadn't before. Inside the lid, etched in tiny, faint scratches I know weren't there yesterday, was a single line: I never left. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. The walls were breathing, the air was thinking, and the attic was watching. I stopped sleeping. Not in the poetic sense, like I was restless or haunted, but in the literal, terrifying way where your body begs for rest and your mind refuses to let it. Every time my eyes closed, they snapped back open with the sound of creaking floorboards echoing behind them. The attic door, still sealed and latched, began to hum at night, not a vibration, a hum, low and steady like something was charging behind it. I quit my job without telling anyone. I disconnected the landline. I left my phone in a drawer and refused to open it again after the third night in a row. It rang at exactly 2:16 a.m. Each time, no number. Each time, the same sound, static, followed by breathing. I became a ghost in my own house. I stopped showering. I stopped eating. I lived in the same clothes, gray sweats, a hoodie 2 sizes too big, and wool socks with holes in the heels. The only thing I clutched tighter than the music box was a flashlight, which I kept on at all times, even during the day. The storm had passed days ago, but the attic never let up. It stormed inside now. Cold gusts would breathe under the door. My lights would flicker. The smell of wet wood and iron would drift down the staircase. And sometimes, when I stood in the hallway at night, I swore I could hear a voice whispering my name through the ceiling. It was never loud, never angry, just there, patient. Waiting. I tried to leave once, just once, got in my car, turned the key. But when the headlights blinked on, the front window of the house, my bedroom, was lit from the inside, the curtains drawn open, and there, barely visible behind the glass, was a silhouette I recognized too well. Melody. No smile, no wave, just staring. I turned the car off, sat in the driveway for hours, then went back inside. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd open the attic. Not to escape it, but to understand what it wanted. It was quiet that morning, a kind of silence I hadn't heard in months, thick, breathless, and expectant. I stood in front of the attic door for almost an hour, just standing, flashlight in one hand, music box in the other. My heart thudded but slowly now, like it had finally resigned itself. The lock was still in place, but the key was already in my pocket. Funny, I don't remember putting it there. I clicked it open. No resistance. The door creaked back on its own, and the smell hit me. Not must, not rot. It was salt, like ocean air soaked in copper. I clicked the flashlight on. A beam of pale light climbed the steep stairs. Step by step, I went up, expecting something, a figure, a scream, a crash. But the attic didn't meet me with violence. It welcomed me, warm, still. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you've been here before, just in another life. The walls were wrong, not slanted or narrow like I remembered. They breathed. I swear they breathed. The air shimmered faintly, like heat on asphalt, and every sound, the creak of the boards, my breathing, the small click of the flashlight button, echoed in strange ways, bouncing back distorted. I moved slowly. My hand brushed a low beam, and it was cold, so cold it burned. There was a space in the center now, a clearing, like someone had made a circle, charred, perfect. And inside it, her phone, my old phone, still lit, still calling my number. I didn't touch it. I couldn't, because just beyond the circle, in the farthest corner where the flashlight dimmed, something moved, not stepped, not crawled, shifted. A shape, unformed, constantly folding in on itself like liquid shadows. But eyes, so many eyes, and they all turned to me. I dropped the music box. It cracked, and the attic groaned like 100 voices inhaling at once. I couldn't move. The air wasn't just thick, it pressed against me, like the attic was breathing me in. That thing in the corner, Melody, or what used to be Melody, shifted again, not crawling or walking, but rearranging the space around her. And then, she spoke. But not with words, not exactly. It was a feeling, a memory, a pressure behind the eyes, the same sensation I'd felt when I first heard her voice on the phone, the night I found the photo behind the wall, the moment the music box played without me winding it. And the message was clear. You brought me here. You remembered me. And now, you see me. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even human. It was grateful and hungry. I tried to back away, but the attic had changed. The stairs were gone. The door behind me was a wall now, and the eyes, all of them, watched with quiet patience. Not rushing, just waiting. I whispered her name. Melody? She answered with laughter, like a wind chime caught in a storm, familiar, beautiful, wrong. I was never Melody, but she let me wear her. So you'd listen. A cold hand brushed my shoulder, except it was mine, my hand, reaching for myself from behind. I turned, and I was back downstairs, standing in the living room, music box in one hand, phone in the other. The attic door wide open, but black inside, hollow, ordinary. Had I imagined it? Had I fallen asleep again? Then the phone buzzed, new voicemail. I hit play, and I heard my voice, crying, breathing, saying her name over and over again. And in the background, the attic door creaked shut. I haven't gone back up since, but the music box winds itself now, and I keep finding new photos in the wall of people I've never met, of people who don't exist anymore.